Come here, Mills. Millie Mills. Millie, come say good morning. Say hello. Hi. So we've been so interested in all of the stuff we've been finding at the pond, I thought today we might try to catch some things in our net. Now, my original plan was to bring up my my nature net from the STEM lab, and I walked out on Friday and I forgot it. So we are going to do what scientists do best, which is improvise. And I went and I stopped at the dollar store and I just got these little 2 sink strainers. But if mom or dad has some old kitchen tools that they don't care about getting dirty, or if you have a proper science net, you can certainly bring them with you to the pond or the beach or whatever environment you are looking to explore. So we'll put Millie away, we'll go down to the pond, and we'll get the party started. So this is a section of the pond that I've never been to. Usually don't come this way because we don't want Spencer to hop out and run around through these woods where we can't really get out and chase him. But I figured while he's with Todd walking around, we will come and take a look at this little section over here. Let me slow down. So I thought this would be a good place to read the book that I've chosen today, because it's got we're coming up against 2 environments. We've got our forest that goes all the way back up the mountain, and then it goes right up to the edge of the pond. And the book that we're going to read today is about creatures that live not necessarily in the pond, but along the edge of the pond. And I don't know, the illustrations in this book are amazing. So we will get organized and then we'll get started. So our story today is called Pond Circle, and it's written by Betsy Franco, and it's illustrated by Stefano Vitali. And the interesting little known fact about this author is she was a kindergarten teacher, and her son is the actor James Franco. And she now illustrates, shouldn't say illustrates, she now writes children's books, but she was a kindergarten teacher for many years. So maybe I'll do this in my next my next career, right? It's always good to dream. So we've got Pond Circle. Pond Circle by Betsy Franco. Illustrated by Stefano Vitali. And you can see we've got the smallest creatures in the pond, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it almost looks like they're chasing one another. We're going to have to read and find out why that is. And look, she even dedicated it for James. We know James is her son. This is the water, the deep still water, that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the algae, the jade green algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the nymph, the mayfly nymph that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the beetle, the diving beetle, that ate the nymph that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the frog, the loud bullfrog, that ate the nymph that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. Oh, who do we have here? This is the snake, the garter snake, that swallowed the frog, that gobbled the beetle, that ate the nymph, that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the skunk, the shy striped skunk, that caught the snake, that swallowed the frog, that gobbled the beetle, that ate the nymph, that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the owl, the great horned owl, that dived for the skunk, that caught the snake, that swallowed the frog, that gobbled the beetle, that ate the nymph, that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond by Anna's house. This is the raccoon, the hungry raccoon, that stole the eggs of the great horned owl, that dived for the skunk, that caught the snake, that swallowed the frog, that gobbled the beetle, that ate the nymph, that nibbled the algae that grew in the water that filled the pond, all by Anna's house. Ooh, look at the sky. This is the coyote out in the dark that stalked the raccoon, the hungry raccoon that stole the eggs of the great horned owl, that dived for the skunk, the shy striped skunk, that caught the snake, the garter snake, that swallowed the frog, the loud bullfrog, that gobbled the beetle, the diving beetle, that ate the nymph, the mayfly nymph, that nibbled the algae, the jade green algae, that grew in the water, the deep still water, that filled the pond by Anna's house. I am the girl whose name is Anna, who heard the coyote one summer night by the still, deep water, where the algae grows, the mayflies dart, the beetles dive, the frogs spring, the snakes swim, the skunks shuffle, the owls swoop, the raccoons rummage, and the coyotes howl. I am the girl who heard the coyote, looked up from her book, leaned out the window, and howled back, "Hello, hello out there," across the darkness and out into the pond of deep, still water. All by my house. And so now here are some facts about how those animals live together at the pond. So we've got algae, which green algae are tiny plants, and we've picked up some of those in our pond jar. We're going to go collecting today with our net and see what we can catch in our net. So today we're going to be looking for algae and maybe some mayfly nymphs. Maybe we'll catch some diving beetles. And maybe we'll even get, I know I'm not fast enough to catch a frog, but we might be able to see some tadpoles and maybe some pollywogs and some froglets. And we'll be on the lookout for these other creatures as well. So I'm going to grab my nets and sieves, and we will go into some of the shallow places and see what we can catch.
This is an example of a food chain. A food chain shows the interdependence between smaller organisms and creatures and their relationship to the larger ones in the environment. For example, in the pond, algae make their food from the sun. These tiny plants feed small pond organisms like pond shrimp. Bigger fish then eat those shrimp. And finally, apex predators like eagles eat the fish. One part of the food chain could not exist without all the building blocks beneath it. Let's go see which parts of this pond's food chain we can find.
So we're casting a very wide net today, seeing what can we catch in our net. So we're out here in this area where Spencer likes to chase ducks occasionally. And I took a scoop, and my first scoop, I've got some pebbles and some, I don't know, pond plant life of some sort. That might be that duckweed. So here we've got some water lilies, and you can see their big long roots. They go all the way down to the bottom of the pond. And there's the leaf on top. A lot of these got pulled up by the storm. So we caught some, looks like some algae, and maybe a water beetle. Let's see what else we can find. Perfect. There's all these little guys. And of course we left our field guide at home, so we'll have to look them up when we get back. I'll watch my net. Oh. Let's see what I got in my net. Woo! I'm like in between a spider web. Let's see. See? On my net? There is a family of ducks, and they're doing something that is very interesting, especially since we read over and under in the pond. You can see them dipping their heads below and pulling up that duckweed. Sometimes you'll see their heads, and sometimes you'll see their butts. I'm going to see if I can get a little closer without scaring them. Alright, so you see that log? Take a look at the edge of that log. We don't often see beaver, but let me see if I can get this a little closer. You can definitely see their teeth marks. The trick around here, and the same thing with anything else, whether you're at the beach or at the lake, you can actually see their teeth marks. It's pretty cool. The trick is to go slow so that you can really spot all those little clues and details. So there's evidence of our beavers. We didn't manage to spot any apex predators, but we did manage to catch a silly dog in our net. There's going to be a rumble. The ones from the other shore will come up too. Huh, interesting. Maybe. Right, and those other ones from the other shore are still in tight formation. No, they came from this group.
No, I know, but they separated.
Yeah.
Groups.
Yeah. And that one from the other shore, they're staying pretty tight.